On today's episode of You Asked, will Sony's Theater Quad speaker system work in an untraditional setup? HDMI cables, when should you actually pay more for one? And why is your TV volume all over the place when streaming? Welcome back to the channel, everyone. This is You Asked, the show where we answer your tech questions. If you've got something you want to know, send your question to youasked@digitaltrends.com. And don't forget to tune into the show to see if your question has been selected. Alan Garth has a question we can all relate to, I think. He says, I'm running Hulu Live TV through a 4K Max Fire TV box. Everything with the audio is fine until an ad comes on. I fast forward through the ad, then the audio is lowered to the point where I have to turn it way up to here. Then, when another ad comes on, it blasts me out of the room. Is there a setting on my Samsung Smart TV that I need to change? The issue here is a dirty trick that Hulu and some streamers can get away with because they aren't traditional cable TV. See, back in 2010, a federal law was passed here in the US called the CALM Act. It stands for Commercial Advertisement Loudness Mitigation Act. As you'd expect by the name, it requires TV commercials to have the same loudness as the programming it's placed in. The thing is, it only applies to broadcast, cable, and satellite providers. Hulu, and I imagine others that have paid plans with ads and being non-traditional providers, can get around that act. And you better believe their advertisers want their content to grab your attention by any means necessary. So those volume spikes that the CALM Act prevents on traditional television get ignored elsewhere. It's less than ideal. But I think there is a workaround with your 4K Max Fire TV to level the volume. I don't have one myself, but my research tells me it's called the volume leveler. I think the way to go is to look up the settings menu, then find display and sound, then audio, followed by advanced audio, or something like that. Then look for the volume leveler. Hopefully that fixes the issue for you. I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention that just last month, October 2025, the state of California and Governor Gavin Newsom signed into law a bill that will mirror what the CALM Act does with streaming services within the state. So, Alan, if you're in California, help is on the way. And if you're not, it's still probably on the way since what happens there often becomes a national trend as well. Mike's question is next up. He says, I want to upgrade my TV setup. I want to buy the Sony Bravia 8 Mark II, and I'm really hesitating about which audio system to pair it with. I'm very interested in the Sony Quad speakers, but my living room layout is unusual. I've attached a photo of the speaker placement I'm planning. Could you tell me if that looks okay? I'm a little worried because the TV won't be centered between the two front speakers. Could you tell me what you think? And would a classic soundbar system, for example, the Sonos Arc Ultra, under my TV with a subwoofer and Era 300 speakers at the rear be more suitable? Great question, Mike, and I certainly think we can get you pointed in the right direction. First off, both the Sonos Arc Ultra and Sony Bravia Theater Quad systems you're considering are top-notch choices that you would love. However, I do think you'd find Sony's Quad speakers to be the better choice here because of your unusual setup. To me, that's the exact reason this Quad system exists. The four speakers and the way they're built to output sound are perfect for unorthodox setups, especially when using Sony's 360 spatial sound mapping. Basically, you'll put the four speakers where you need them to be based on your setup, and then through the app, you'll run the sound mapping setup. Each speaker will take turns playing a loud sound that allows the system to map out the room and speaker placement to provide the best surround sound experience. It also helps the system set the phantom speakers that make it sound like sound will be coming from speakers that aren't actually there. Again, just making a perfect dome of sound for your viewing experience. It's actually really impressive technology. But furthermore, in our last studio, we also had an unorthodox setup in terms of where the speakers could be placed. At times, one was placed on a bookshelf at different levels, sometimes on top, sometimes on a shelf. Another was placed on a shelf of a different height altogether, under some stairs, and a few floated around the TV in various areas. But any way we placed them, it sounded great every time. Once you throw the TV in the mix, regardless of the front speaker's proximity to it, I'm pretty sure you'll be able to accurately use the TV audio as a center channel as intended. Also, looking at your setup, I think physically the Sony Quad system works better for your space too. A soundbar might be an awkward fit up there with the TV, but thinner Sony speakers might fit better and look better overall. Even behind your couch, I think the thicker profile of the Era 300s might make them stand out more than you want them to. We actually have a video comparing the Sony and Sonos systems directly against each other that I think you'd really like. It answers some of the questions you asked and a lot of questions you may not even think to ask. I'll link it in the description. Oscar Valencia has a question about everyone's favorite HDMI cables. He says, do HDMI cables really make a difference? I asked because I own 2 monster HDMI cables and one is giving me problems. So should I go and buy a high-end cable? I use it for gaming and watching movies with a projector. To answer the first part of your question, yes, HDMI cables do make a difference, but only to a certain extent. Do not overpay for them. This isn't always a you get what you pay for situation where a higher price tag means better performance. To be safe, look for cables that are certified as premium, which means they are licensed to pass 4K content. Monoprice is a great starting point for fairly priced cables, and last time I looked at their website, they were running a really good sale. Like, so good you might pay more for shipping than the actual HDMI cable, and they have a really good return policy. And I bring up the return policy because they're cables. Things happen. Even your current cables, if they were once good, they could fail. And if it happens soon after receiving them and you have a good return policy, great, you're covered. And in the case of Monoprice, if you don't overpay for the cable, like under $20, you don't feel as bad when you have to replace them. At least that's the approach that I take for basic monitor or TV connections to Blu-ray players or things that don't necessarily demand the highest speeds or performance. I will say that for my PlayStation 5, after moving and misplacing the original HDMI 2.1 cable that came with it, I sprung for one that was licensed by PlayStation. I think I paid about $40 for it, which I probably should not have, but if seeing something more official gives you peace of mind, like an official license, there is that. And for what it's worth, that cable has been excellent and held up for years. I think the only other time I'd pay up is if the cable comes with a specific feature. Sometimes you need a right angle connection at one end of the cable if it makes plugging it in easier. Sometimes cables are also rated for specific environments, like running through walls or along ceilings. If you need to cover longer distances, I'd look into an optical HDMI cable. It uses light pulses transmitted through glass or plastic fibers to send video and audio signals, whereas traditional HDMI cables use copper, and over longer distances, you might have some signal drops. They're typically used in larger buildings and stadiums, but if your home has unique demands and you don't want to take any chances, it's probably worth spending a little bit more. Either way, Monoprice or Amazon or somewhere with a decent return policy is your friend here. Just don't fall for the ultra super fast hype you see from brands that want to charge you $60 for a cable that's under 10 feet long. That does it for this week's episode. We appreciate you guys sending in the questions as always because you truly do keep the show going. If you've got holiday specific questions or gift advice you need, the doors are open there as well as we get into late November. Thanks as always for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Elevate your smartphone with the Digital Trends app bundle. 17 premium apps in one plan. From productivity to entertainment, it's all here. Start your free trial today by clicking the link in the description.